Hey guys, welcome to today's video. In this video I'm going to talk about factoring trinomials and specifically the cases where you have a coefficient in front of the x squared term. In other words, the coefficient is something other than 1. So let's take a look at this trinomial. So we've got 3x squared minus 22x minus 16. One thing I want to also mention about factoring is we always want to make sure that if there is a GCF, a greatest common factor, we factor that out of the expression before we start dismantling it. But in this case, there are no common factors. So we're going to do a method, I just call it first times last. And that means the coefficient of the first term times the last term. And notice I'm not even paying attention to the signs, the plus and minus signs. This is one of the rare cases in math where you can ignore that. All I'm interested in is what's the product of 3 times 16, and that's 48. Now I'm going to make a complete factor list of pairs of factors that multiply to give me 48. So the first one's 1 times 48, and we have 2 times 24, 3 times 16, 4 times 12, 5 doesn't work, 6 times 8, 7 doesn't work, 8 works, but it's already in the list, and once we get a repeat, we know we've got a complete factor list. Now, I look at this list to see if any pairs of factors have a sum or difference of 22. And we have that right here. So now I'm going to use the 2 and the 24 to rewrite this expression and break up the middle term into two different terms using the 2 and the 24. So it's going to be 3x squared, then minus 24x, because 24 has to be the negative number, and then plus 2x, and minus 16. Now I'm going to set up my parentheses and just recall that the numbers we're looking at here, or the terms we're looking at here, come from foiling binomials. So this came from the multiplication of the first terms, and then the outside terms, the inside terms, and the last terms. So what do we put in the first position here? The way we're going to determine that is to find the GCF of this term and this term. And that's going to be 3x. And then 3x times what would give me 3x squared? That would be x. This term comes from the outside terms being multiplied. So 3x times something over here gives me negative 24x. So that would have to be negative 8. The inside terms being multiplied gave us 2x. So this space here, whatever's in this space, times x gives me a positive 2x. So that's got to be a positive 2. And then the last terms, positive 2 times negative 8 gives us negative 16. So that checks out. And that is, in fact, our answer. So and you can go ahead and multiply that back out using the FOIL method to see that it takes you right back to the original. So this is a fantastic method. It is so much better than guess and check, because I would not want to waste my time to guess and check that. This is going to get you there a lot faster. Again, if you do a factor list using this method and you don't get a pair of factors that gives you sum or difference of the middle term coefficient, then it's not going to factor politely, and you would go ahead and use either the quadratic formula or completing the square, the other two methods for determining the solution of the equation. So let's look at another example. 4x squared minus 27x plus 45. So in this one, we've got somewhat larger numbers, but we can handle that. So our first times last is 4 times 45, which is 180. Calculator time, obviously, if you want, this is certainly something that when you get into numbers like this, just you might want to go ahead and use the calculator. I already did this ahead of time, so I'm not just doing this all off the top of my head. So it's 1 times 180, 2 times 90, 3 times 60, 4 times 45, 5 times 36, 6 times 30, 9 times 20, and I can move over here, 9 times 20, 10 times 18, 12 times 15. And 13 doesn't work, 14 doesn't work, 15 works, but it's a repeat. So that's our complete list. Again, we look, do any of these have a sum or difference of 27? Well, it turns out it's our last pair of factors. And again, we will rewrite our expression. So we've got 4x squared. This time they're both going to be negative, minus 12x, minus 15x, and plus 45. Set up our parentheses. So the GCF of these two terms is 4x. 4x times what to give us x squared? That would be x. All right, the outside terms, 4x times something multiplies to give us negative 12. So that's got to be a negative 3. And then inside terms, something times x gives us negative 15x. Well, that's negative 15. And then negative 15 times negative 3, well, that checks. That gives us the positive 45. Again, that's an expression I would really prefer not to spend time guessing and checking. This method is fantastic and takes you straight to the answer. So for our next example, let's look at this expression, 30x squared minus 21x minus 36. So these are somewhat large numbers, but I also noticed they have a GCF. They're all divisible by 3. So we can factor out that 3 from the expression, which leaves us with 10x squared minus 7x minus 12. So that's going to be what we focus on. I'm just going to rewrite that by itself for the moment. And using the same approach as before, we're going to multiply the first times last, 10 times 12, which gives us 120. Again, a number with a lot of factors, and I'll go through this quickly since I did this ahead of time. Of course, you might want to be using a calculator if you're working with numbers of this size, just for speed and accuracy. So our factor list: 1 times 120, 2 times 60, 3 times 40, 4 times 30, 5 times 24, 6 times 20, 7 doesn't work, 8 times 15, 9 does not work, and then 10 times 12. 11 doesn't work, 12 works, but it's already there, so that's our complete factor list. And as always, we're looking for a pair of factors that has a sum or difference of this middle term. So what do we have here that has a sum or difference of 7? That'll be the 8 and the 15. Again, we will break up that middle term. So we have 10x squared. And this, the 15 will have to be negative. So negative 15x, and then plus 8x, and then minus 12. Set up our parentheses. All right, the GCF of these first two terms is 5x. And then 5x times what would give us 10x squared? This is going to have to be a 2x. All right, that takes care of that first term. Now, this came from the outside term, so 5x times something over here gives us negative 15x, so that's negative 3. And then this term comes from the inside terms, so something times 2x to give us 8x, that's plus 4. And our final answer is going to be 3 times the 5x plus 4 times the 2x minus 3. And this 3 just came from my initial factoring out the GCF of that expression. Now, one more example quickly. We'll look at, let me go over here. Let's shift this a little bit. The expression 2x squared minus 3x minus 6. And first times last is going to be 2 times 6, which equals 12. So the factors of that, 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. 4 works, but it's a repeat, so that's our complete list. Now we look to see, do any of these have a sum or difference of 3? No, they don't. So this is not going to factor. And so we, at this point, would switch over to looking at the quadratic formula or completing the square to finish this problem. And I'll post videos for those pretty soon. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or problems like you'd like to see worked, just leave a note in the comments.